What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY in the overall markets. I'll talk about some big numbers that just came out for our GDP reports, not to mention some new developments in the charts after we got some big earnings. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed at 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. Deposit $2,000 or more, and you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends very soon tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. Right now, Tesla's showing a little bit of weakness after these GDP numbers had just come out. We start off with a bit of a bounce right over here, back up to about this 262 area. I mentioned everyone I was expecting 260 to 265. And I said to watch and see how Tesla reacts to this resistance once we get our GDP numbers. And so far, the market is slowing just a little bit ever since these numbers came out. I think that this is what is once again contributing to why we're seeing Tesla also slowing. So this is one big factor as we're getting very close to our 20 EMA, and we'll have to see how Tesla reacts to that. But I'll talk more about this in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about the data. Today is Wednesday, October 30th. Do not forget that 1 hour before the market was scheduled to open, we just got this data at 8:30 a.m. So the GDP growth rate was at 2.8%. That is below expectations of 3 to 3.3%. The GDP price index was at 1.8%, a little bit below expectations as well, as we were expecting 1.9 to 2.5%. And then not core PC, GDP sales, this is basically at 3%. That was a little bit above expectations. So very mixed data, but some things were showing some weakness in our overall numbers. Now, we also had the ADP employment change. This was above expectations, so it kind of offset this a little bit, which is why the market got a very flat reaction. But overall, the GDP numbers were not that great, not what a lot of investors were looking for. So we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get. Later on, we do have PCE tomorrow, so I'll talk more about PCE later on. For earnings, as a quick recap, we had AMD and Alphabet announce their earnings yesterday. Alphabet did relatively well, beating on EPS and revenue, showing lots of good growth in their different sectors from YouTube advertising revenue, not to mention Google Cloud revenue. So good job by Google slash Alphabet. AMD, on the other hand, had basically beaten and met earnings. They met all that, but the issue with them is the fact that they announced that their overall guidance wasn't as great as what a lot of people were looking out for. So their guidance was aligned with expectations for Q4, but overall it showed 22% of a decline year over year. So despite the fact that they gave us their guidance, it was aligned with expectations. It wasn't necessarily enough to really impress investors. That's why the share price is down. Tech has been on the watch. We had some mixed reports. So AMD was down, but Alphabet was up. But now we're seeing a reaction to the GDP numbers. On top of that, there's not really a whole lot else that's going on. We're going to be looking at our very important PCE numbers coming out for tomorrow. So we'll see how things go from there. Besides that, as far as Tesla goes, there's been a lot of talk about how the Model Y could be having a refresh starting very, very soon. Some sources are saying that this could be coming out a lot better sooner than expected, and there are other factors saying that. I just want to say that with all this talk about how the Model Y is going to be coming out, and you refresh this and that, we're seeing this all over the news. There's nothing confirmed by Tesla quite yet, and don't forget, Elon Musk and Tesla's team have said that Tesla is not doing it this year. They're not doing a Model Y refresh this year, so I don't expect it to basically be coming out yet. It could be coming out possibly sometime next year, but for now, there's no confirmation yet. Are these vehicles that people are seeing officially the Tesla Model Y? We don't know for sure. The new refresh, we don't know for sure. The Tesla's not necessarily confirmed it, so it's all just based off speculation. So we'll just have to see how things go. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the share prices of all these different companies. So as far as Tesla goes, we are dipping a little bit. I want to give you a warning. I do expect 254 to be tested. We might be seeing a small dip here because we came up to this high, then we ended up seeing a little bit of a dip right here. We dipped back down, rebounded a bit only to reject again. We rebounded a bit yesterday thanks to Google's earnings, only to reject again. So it's just popping and dropping. I do anticipate we're going to be coming all the way down to about 254 very soon. If that fails for Tesla, there's going to be a bigger dip to 250. Not to mention this imbalance will take us all the way down to like 244. So look for more downside for 254. If we're bullish on Tesla, we want to break past 260. But this is once again favoring downside a little bit more. Might be looking for a dip for 254 at least or below. So just keep that in mind. As far as SPY goes, we pumped to just under all-time highs right after Google announced their earnings. But I called this out. I said, guys, be careful because once again, the closer we get to 255, we do tend to reject. So now we're testing this trend line as our support. If this holds on SPY, this is going to be at 581 around that area. If this holds, we could attempt to rebound near our 20 EMA. We could be looking for a bounce back up to 583. If we lose 581, we're looking for 580 as our target, then 578. So be careful. This is looking a little bit weaker here after the GDP numbers were released. We start off with a pump thanks to Google's earnings, not too far from all-time highs, only to reject. So this is at risk of coming closer to 580 or below. So look for that potential downside as a very, very probable case. For ES, we're also range bound going back and forth here. We're looking for 58.67 as our support. If that fails us, we're looking for 58.50. We also have this resistance at 58.80. So we could be kind of popping a bit, then dipping a little bit lower to 58.50. So I do see a risk of us kind of dipping a little bit upon open now. We did pump a bit thanks to Google's earnings. Now we're slowing down after we got another report. As far as Nvidia is going, we're starting to break below this wedge. So now it looks to me like we have a kind of like weaker structure up there. We're going to be looking for a test of 138 very soon. We need to get back above 140 to turn back up, but this is favoring 138. If that fails us, we're looking for a bigger decline to 135. AMD is the reason why this is dipping. Bitcoin pumped to about 73,000 only to start dipping. We're looking for an attempt to get back down to 71,000. So just keep that in mind. For other factors out there, we have NQ. NQ pumped to about 20,800. I did call that area out. And instead of breaking through that, we're starting to slow here. So we're going to be looking for 20,675 as our resistance. If we don't hold above that, there's a risk of us coming down to 20,600. So we could be looking for a dip back down to these lower supports. So give this the time it needs. As far as the QQQ goes, we pumped very, very nicely to 502. Now we're starting to dip. We're going to be watching 500. If we don't hold above that, there's going to be a risk of us dipping back down to about 498 and then 496.75. If we hold above 500, we're going to be looking for a push, but this is favoring downside to 498 and 496.75. So watch those levels very, very carefully. Um, Apple's dipping right here. We have 232.5 and then 231.9 as our supports. If we end up dipping below 232.5, I do think we might get closer to this gap fill for the 231s. But overall, Apple's very like range bound, very choppy. So it might dip a little bit, then just chop around for the most part because it's just waiting for earnings for a bigger reaction. Um, the IWM is dipping here. We need to get back above 221 to turn back up. If we fail to do that, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to back down, to 220. And if that fills us, we have a gap to fill way down here. Let me just go over a few more. For Coinbase, we're dipping right over here. We're looking at support at 213. We got to hold 213. I did mention yesterday it's going to likely dip. If 213 fills us, we're looking for a dip back down to 208 and eventually this gap fill. So give this the time it needs. Amazon's pumping very nicely. It pumped with Google, but now we're at this resistance. We called out 195 yesterday, so the target was already made. So we could be declining a bit back down to about 193.8 as our main support, followed by 192. Could decline just a bit before it tries to bounce again, so we'll be watching this. Meta pumped very nicely to 610. We're going to be looking at this 609 to 610 areas resistance. If we start dipping back down, we're looking for basically 600 as our main support. So it might retest 600. And we'll see if it bounces off that or not. If not, we're looking for 558. Microsoft could be dipping back down to fill this gap. We have this gap down here at 436. So we hit 440 very nicely, but now it's a tough resistance. We need to hold above 440 to remain bullish. If not, we're going to be dipping back down to 437. And last but not least, for Google, we pumped very nicely all the way up to about 183. We are dipping back down to 182, so it's cooling off just a little bit. So it could get closer to 180, but then it could try to bounce again. It's still bullish overall, guys. So Google has a lot of strength. Just keep that in mind. With that being said, guys, as far as the market is going, we pumped very nicely approaching the reaction to Alphabet's earnings. But ever since our GDP numbers came out, now the market's starting to slow a little bit. So just keep that in mind. We kind of pumped already. Now we're starting to dip. So the market could start dipping again. And there is a risk of even more downside. Just keep that in mind, especially for Tesla. It's still looking a little bit weak here. Okay. So that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely spectacular rest of your day. I'll be back in a couple of hours for another update. Until then, thank you and peace out.